Greetings, everyone, and for probably the 20th time now, and I'm starting to get more than a little frustrated with this. Hopefully this run will actually go well. Anyway, I'm here to talk about the first series of Benton, because leading up to the new Omniverse cartoon, I figured I would do a series overview of all three series, so I'm going to start with the first series, which started, if I remember correctly, in 2007, and it follows young Ben Tennyson, who is 10 years old and is just going on summer vacation with his grandpa Max and his cousin Gwen. Running parallel to this, an alien conqueror, who I'll talk about at the end of the video, has destroyed a ship and is trying to get valuable cargo. And the inhabitants of the ship that he destroys send it to Earth. Ben goes to locate it after it crash lands in the nearby forest where his grandfather has parked, his camper. And Ben finds a watch. And this watch is later revealed as the Omnitrix, a device of immense power that turns its wearer into 10 different aliens. And this thing is binded to Ben's wrist. The only way to get it off of him is to sever his wrist or forcibly pry it from him. And throughout this series, Ben learns how to use the Omnitrix and learns how to use it responsibly and be a hero while trying to avoid intergalactic bounty hunters, public media events, a whole bunch like Black Ops teams from Area 51, etc., etc. And the Omnitrix grants Ben the ability to turn into 10 different aliens, and I'm going to name all of them off. Ones like Diamond Head, Heat Blast, Accelerate, Gray Matter, Upgrade, Cannonbolt, Stinkfly, Ripjaw, Forearms, although this is the Ben 10,000 version of Forearms, Ghost Freak, who later becomes an enemy of Ben's, Wild Mutt, and Wildvine. Now, later on the series, towards the very end of this series, there we go. Ben gets more aliens, such as Way Big, Eye Guy, Upchuck, and Ditto. And for those of you who are, this is a blatant reference to the Universal monsters, but Ben also even has a Frankenstein form called Ben Victor. He also has a form called Ben Mummy. And he also has a form called Ben Wolf. So, as you can see, those are just a few samples of the alien or speciesal type creatures that Ben can turn into. And there's many different references throughout the series of where Ben's future might go, and one of the great parts is eventually the Ben 10,000 episode, which, coming up here, you actually see Ben 10,000. Now, this version of Ben is 20 years into the future. This is when Ben is 30 years old. And presumably he is or was married because he has a son named Kenny who is also 10 years old. And Ben has become this big savior of Earth. Everybody knows who he is. And on top of that, Ben also has over 10,000 aliens, apparently. And he can, at will, basically initiate a master control where he can, with just a thought, turn into these aliens, almost by force of will. And this is pretty cool because Ben has become a much more experienced fighter. And a few of these aliens are Spitter and Arctiguana. These are just two of his many aliens. And I could go into the many locations of Benton, but I will actually save that for Alien Force next. So, anyway, but yeah, this is presumably a future version of Ben. And this is where Ben is going to be headed in his alleged future. And it seems pretty cool, too. Oh, excuse me. So we move on now to the villains of Benton. I told you guys that Ghost Freak becomes an enemy of Ben's. This is Ghost Freak's true form. This is what he actually looks like. And this came from an episode called Ghost Freaked Out, where Ghost Freak basically gains sentience, escapes the Omnitrix, and then because he needs a host body and can possess people, he can't go out into light unless he possesses another person. So that's his one weakness, is light. He cannot stand light. He's very much a nocturnal creature. So he's a big enemy of Ben's that's been throughout all three of the series thus far. Another enemy of Ben's that's survived throughout the other incarnations is Dr. Animo, a bad Saturday morning mad scientist character who genetically splices animals, mind controls animals, and even in an episode that I just finished watching at the time of this recording called Washington, B.C., he actually reanimates the fossilized corpses of dinosaurs and wreaks havoc on Washington, D.C. So on one hand, he's a throwaway villain, but on the other hand, he's a throwaway villain that's quite a bit dangerous. Now, next we move on to Kevin 11, or Kevin Levin, a character that I'll be talking about in Alien Force and Ultimate Alien. But when he first showed up, he was about the same age as Ben, maybe slightly older, and eventually, due to a mutation of absorbing too much Omnitrix energy, because as we find out, he is part of an alien race called the Osmosians. And being Osmosian, basically Kevin can absorb energy and can absorb basically elements. Like if he touches stone, he can turn into stone. But in this series, he absorbed all the energy of the Omnitrix and he mutated into this creature. He also does the same thing in Ultimate Alien. And pretty much he became the second most dangerous enemy to Ben. And there was a future version of him called Kevin 11,000. So needless to say, Kevin is probably the most dangerous of Ben's enemies. But I'll save that for Alien Force and Ultimate Alien when I talk about that. Next one up is Eon. This is actually more of an enemy of Ben 10,000. Though Ben has actually fought him a few times in his current state. In his current state of being 10 years old as well. He's basically this time traveler obsessed with trying to wipe Ben out of the timeline for whatever reason. His motives are very unclear thus far. Or at least from what I've seen. I've seen very little of him in the series thus far. Except for that one time. He also shows up in Alien Force and stuff. Here's another one. Zombozo. A character that he's basically a vampiric clown that, and I quote this, sucks people's life energy and souls out by making them laugh. Yes, you heard me correctly. He's a vampiric clown that sucks people's souls and life energy out by making them laugh. Very creepy villain. A lot of hoodoo voodoo crap with him. And some of his henchmen, who later became their own villains, but are more throwaway villains, is the circus freaks. The one on the right spits acid out of his mouth. The one in the middle, the strong man, go figure, stereotypical super strength villain. And the one on the left, the girl, apparently she's Sindel for Mortal Kombat because she can use her hair to basically, like, shatter objects and coil it and all kinds of stuff. These are probably the most common but most beaten enemies that Ben has faced. He's always beating them. Two that I find very interesting, and this picture is actually from Alien Force, is Charmcaster and Hex. Now, these are now Charmcaster is the niece of Hex. Basically, Hex is her uncle, and they're always constantly trying to do these magic rituals and trying to open gateways so that Hex can gain more power as well as Charmcaster. We later find out the purpose for this, however, in Ultimate Alien when Charmcaster reveals that her and her uncle are part of a race of interdimensional magic beings whose whole entire family was part of a resistance to take down a magical demon lord who slayed Charmcaster's parents and whose last act of bravery was to get her and her uncle out of this magical domain and dimension. So, to a certain extent, Charmcaster and Hex are quite sympathetic, even though they are very evil. So, yeah, and also Charmcaster has a rivalry with Gwen because she feels Gwen isn't deserving of her magical abilities. Another set of enemies is the Hybrid. These are basically Taltarian alien dictator armies. They believe that any and all other organic life that is not hybrid should be wiped out and absolutely purged off of the earth. And they believe that anyone that comes into contact with an impure being is either sentenced to death and quickly struck down or is exiled. So needless to say, the hybrid are very, very nasty people. However, later on in, say, Ultimate Alien and Alien Force, they eventually break a century-old truce with the human race and become allies. And the big baddie himself I'm saving for last is Vilgax. Yes, Ben's arch nemesis throughout all the series. The Joker to Ben's Batman. Vilgax is an intergalactic conqueror who is the emperor of a planet called Vilgaxia. He's a completely, benevolent dictatorish ruler. Basically, in other words, he's an intergalactic Doctor Doom. He does sympathetically care for his people, but he rules them with an iron fist. And he constantly is always trying to get the Omnitrix from Ben, and will do anything even short of killing Ben's whole family to do so. However, Vilgax in this humanoid form is not nearly as powerful as his true form, which I'm going to show here, which we see in Ultimate Alien. And if you notice, doesn't he have that H.P. Lovecraft Cthulhu-esque type look to him? I certainly think he does. Nevertheless, Vilgax is a very, very dangerous enemy. And he was actually going to destroy Earth towards the final part of Ultimate Alien, but I'll get into that much, much later. And there were many other enemies that Ben had, such as Mojo and 7-7 and Alien Bounty Hunter and many other characters. However, sadly, I could not find pictures for either most of the other aliens or the other villains that Ben faces. But nevertheless, guys, that is my series overview. As convoluted and as jumbled up as it was, I hope that at least, this gives you a brief idea into why or how awesome the Ben 10 series is. So this is part one of part 1 of 3. Look forward to when I talk about Alien Force and when I start talking about talk about more aliens and places like the Null Void and Primus. So that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned.